the rock formations that make up Midland and Penetang are considered a world geozone. Midland and Penetang are actually pushing to turn the bay here into a geopark, which would actually put us on the international map of world wonders to go and see.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Promo Minds podcast interview series. Today I have Adrian Sauvageot, who is a local entrepreneur in the Midland, Penetang area. He's a co-owner of the Hawkstars franchise. He owns about 22 different units as far as real estate investing goes. He has a background in marketing. Him and I sat down a few weeks back and we had a really good chit chat, and I really wanted to bring him on the show because here's a young guy who's making things happen, and I think he's got a lot of cool insights to share. So without further ado, Adrian, welcome.
Hey Steve, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. I think that you have such a cool story in terms of like how your career has changed over the years, and just with everything you got going on. Like, first off, how old are you?
So I'm 30 now.
Just turned 30.
Yeah.
And did I have that right, that you're a co-owner of the Hawkstars franchise?
Yeah, so I am a co-owner of the Hawkstars franchise in Penetanguishene, and I'm actually currently in discussions with the owners of the actual franchise company to come into corporate as well and help them grow that into a Canada-wide business.
That's amazing. Hawkstars, I've seen, like, there's one in Midland here. You said, do you have one in Penetang and somewhere else?
Yeah, so Hawkstars is actually in Owen Sound, Wasaga, and Penetang. The guys in Midland, we don't have anything to do with.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. See, I've already learned something. So why don't you share a little bit about your background here? And when we sat down and talked, you had mentioned that you were in marketing space and you were working for a company, and ended up, your journey kind of took you up here and things kind of changed for you. So maybe you can give some background story on just your marketing world and maybe how you got started with real estate.
For sure. So what I actually ended up doing was in university, I studied software development, which is a great field, growing field. But one thing that I really realized is I did not want to be stuck behind a desk all day, and I didn't want to be in a cubicle. And what it looked like when I graduated from that program is almost all of the jobs were basically office work in a cubicle. But what I understood very well at the same time was the psychology of marketing. So what I ended up doing was I started working doing software with marketing. So I joined a advertising agency in Toronto where we had a lot of like the big Fortune 500 companies, and I led their software team or their digital marketing team. When I joined, basically we had no the company had no digital marketing presence. They were just starting to get into building some websites for people, some digital ads for people. And when I joined, they were like, hey, like, we see this as the future. We want to grow in this, and we want to become known for this. I was at that agency for about 5 years, and by the time I left, digital marketing was actually one of their biggest money producers. So we were building websites that were well over $500,000. We were building massive e-commerce business or websites for big brands, and we were really pushing ahead with that. But what I found out during that process was two things. One, marketing pays well, but there's a lot of politics that go into marketing with Fortune 500 companies, and there is absolutely no retirement plan for marketing. So what I ended up doing was I realized two things. One, I didn't want to be in marketing forever, and I needed to figure out my retirement plan. And two, I wanted to work with smaller businesses instead of the Fortune 500 companies. So after about 5 years of working there, I had a bit of a nest egg saved. I actually started to invest in real estate with that nest egg because I thought it was something that would hold its value long term. And if I was able to acquire enough real estate, I'd be able to pay for my retirement that way. Um, but about 5 years later, I had enough of a nest egg saved. I had enough income coming in from real estate where I said, you know what? If I open up my own marketing agency, even if it doesn't do incredibly well, I can get by with what I was earning off the real estate, and I can just slowly build my business. So that kind of bring me to 2020, which was the year of excitement for the globe. Um, I left my job and started my own agency about 2 months before COVID lockdowns hit. And with kind of where I wanted to be in my agency and what I wanted to do, I ended up focusing on the service industry with a lot of restaurants and with service-based businesses. First 2 months, absolutely fantastic. I was making more than I did at my old job. I was growing my company like crazy, getting clients like crazy, and then COVID hit. And essentially, I spent, I'd say, a good 2 weeks of answering phone calls from all my clients with them just asking me to cancel their contracts. They had been shut down. There was complete uncertainty. A lot of these clients were in Toronto, and they're basically paying $20,000, $30,000 a month in rent with no income coming in. They didn't know how they were going to survive a couple months, let alone however long lockdowns were going to be. And sadly, a lot of my clients ended up having to close their doors during that time. What that meant for me was all of a sudden I went from this bustling marketing agency to sitting at home, um, essentially playing League of Legends and trying to figure out what my next step was. And about 2 weeks after I was effectively unemployed, I was going stir crazy, and I said, you know what? I'm handy enough. I'm just going to go full out into real estate. My brother lived locally at the time too, and he was like, "Hey, you know what? Let's just do this." So we started going around and trying to purchase as many properties as possible that needed a lot of work, and we just dove in and started doing the renovations and started to uh, essentially build what is now a substantial real estate holding. Um, so yeah, it
That's
was kind of
incredible.
a whirlwind of of stuff. But it's I laugh. I have ADHD and I can't sit still. So that effective unemployment job loss really was making me go stir crazy, and I just had to dive into something. And it just so happened that while lockdowns were in effect, everything was closed. I could still be working on these properties by myself. We could still be pushing forward, and I could just keep my head down, keep working, and keep pushing forward.
That's amazing. It's a lot to dissect there.
Yeah.
First off, you mentioned that the company that you work for prior to starting your own marketing agency was based out of Toronto. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up in Toronto. I lived there basically my whole life up until about I want to say it was 2019 where I started coming up to Midland regularly, and then 2020 when I started my business, I moved up here just because the cost of living is so much more affordable here than it is in Toronto. That I said, you know what, when I'm building my business, I don't want to have these very high costs over my head. I want to go to a place that's a little more affordable, somewhere where I can start my business and not have to worry about the bills piling up.
Gotcha. All right. So, okay, so you started your own company. A few months later, the pandemic hit, and you got all these contracts that were being canceled, and then you started up in to. I guess you didn't really start up in real estate, but you kind of went full force into real estate. And what was it like when you first made that decision? Like, was because it was fairly early in 2020, wasn't it? Like April or something like that.
Yeah.
So like a month after the world shut down, were you a little nervous about what was going to unfold in the coming months, or were you certain with, hey, we're going to go full bore into this and it's going to appreciate like crazy?
So, I mean, there's a little bit of both. when COVID first hit, no one knew what was happening, right? Like it was a complete free for all disaster. Everyone was running a Canadian Tire to try to get toilet paper, right? It was
Yep.
one of those things where no one really could predict the future. But I just knew that at that time I had property. One of the units was vacant, and I knew that, hey, this could fill my day. Um, it was probably about 2, 3 months into lockdown when I really decided with my brother that, hey, we have to do this. And one of the big things that kind of made that determining factor as well was we were looking at what the federal government was doing. And they were printing money like absolutely crazy, going to debt like crazy. And we just saw inflation was going to go through the roof. So we said, you know what? Any cash that we have is going to be worthless by the end of this. So let's just get into some hard assets, and let's get into hard assets where we're leveraging, because debt is also going to become um, valueless eventually because of how quick inflation was going up. So essentially, what we were looking at was we partnered up with Meridian, who, by the way, is an amazing credit union. I'd highly suggest reaching out to them if you're ever going into the investment space. We partnered up with them, and we started basically looking at properties that we would be able to acquire and turn around fairly quickly. And that worked really for, I'd say, about 6 months into COVID, until they kind of told us to hit the brakes. I actually remember we were about to purchase another property. We were getting everything all ready. We had the financing condition in there, and I was expecting it to be like a home run. They'd sign off on it, no problem. And I messaged our contact there, and they're like, "Well, we're actually holding funding for now because we don't know what's happening." Right. So we actually had to back out of a deal, which would have been a home run deal. It was an amazing building in downtown Midland, but it just didn't work out at the time because I don't know if it was because we were growing so fast that Meridian was a little worried about us, or if it was the fact that Meridian was really worried about the economy in general, because everything was so uncertain at the time.
Yeah. I guess it's kind of the old notion that Warren Buffett talks about, how be greedy when people are fearful and fearful when people are greedy. And
Yeah.
that was something that I saw play out in terms of like the real estate market in the last couple of years. But good for you for, you know, going with your instincts and, jumping in there. For those entrepreneurs out there who you have the entrepreneurial spirit and mindset, but you're just looking for your idea, one of the best books that you could read in order to get those creative juices flowing would be The $100 Startup by Chris Guibo. And honestly, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that name right, but check it out. It is definitely worth it because it has all these little nuances that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but once you see them, once you read them, then the ideas start flowing. It's crazy to think just how successful some of these micro businesses can be, but that's why you have to check it out. That's $100 Startup by Chris Guibo. All right, let's get back to the show. I know you had mentioned in a previous chat that you had purchased some property up here to like just a vacant land that you were going to build a house on, and ran into some challenges with that. Maybe you could speak to that, or is that something that you feel comfortable speaking about?
Yeah, so I did purchase a piece of land up here in Midland. It wasn't a house; it was a small commercial development. Um, this was, I want to say, close to the end of 2020 when we found it. It was basically an off market piece of property that just had a sign stapled to a tree saying "Inquiries, call this number." So we gave the number a call, found out about this property. We're like, hey, you know what? It was acre and a half. About 50% of the property was unusable because it was the hill, but I thought it would make an absolutely fantastic location for a small self storage facility. So we went in, purchased the property, kind of cleared the trees out, got it all kind of ready to to at least survey and possibly build on, and then essentially went kind of into Midland to kind of formalize the process, get everything going, and see what we would be able to build on the property. What ended up happening was it about 3 years later, a lot of money sunk into architectural drawings and this study and that study, and going back and forth with the town. We got it wasn't an approval, but it was a nod that we're heading in the right direction and that something like this could be done. Um, and it just got to the point where I was getting so tired of the bureaucracy around building that I said, you know what? Um, I'm done with trying to develop something. I will happily take something that exists and renovate it and bring it up to code, but I don't want to deal with the town with developments. So I ended up listing that property. Luckily, during that time, properties went up in value enough that I was able to make a little bit of money, even after all the costs that went into that. But yeah, it kind of that kind of turned me off from development, and I said, you know what, I'm now kind of what's called I know my niche, and it's finding rundown properties. It's finding the properties that people don't want to touch because they were hoarder houses, or there's bad tenants, or unpaying tenants, or could be drug houses and things like that. Like, those are the properties that I look for because I can get in there, I can legally do what I need to do to get anyone unpaying out or to get issues dealt with, and then I can renovate them and basically rejuvenate the building. So that's
Right on.
kind of the niche that I've found is like that. That's the way to go. And something else I do want to kind of throw in here is I know there's the rent evictions are a massive issue right now. That is not something that my company does. If you're a good tenant, if you're paying your rent on time, and if you're not disturbing anyone else, like I have tenants paying $500 a month for a unit, which would go for over 1,000 now, right? Like if you're good and you're happy to stay in the unit, I'm happy to keep you there. It's only if you're an issue that you're removed. And I actually had like tenants come up to me afterwards and thank me for getting rid of their neighbor because they were on the verge of leaving because of the neighbor.
Yeah, I can understand that. How have you found that process to be like? If you've, especially like in the last couple of years, has it been a challenge getting them out, or um, is it fairly straightforward for you?
So it is a challenge getting them out. Ontario, the LTB system is like everyone says, it's broken, right? What I've tried to do is be as fair as possible to people. If you're not paying rent and you have back rent due, making a deal to forgive essentially the rent that you're owed in exchange for moving out is something that I've done multiple times. Another thing that I've done once was the tenant wasn't necessarily a problem tenant, but they were hoarding, and there were issues there with safety. So what I actually ended up doing was and this tenant was looking to purchase their own house. So I helped them with a down payment on their house. And in exchange, they were able to leave. Um, so I try to work with people. The thing that I find works best is if there is some sort of financial advantage to them leaving, right? So I've only had to go to the LTB with an eviction all the way once, and that was more something to because this tenant was a complete and utter nuisance, and I couldn't let them win. So I'm just like at a principle, we're going all the way, and your name's going to be published on the the ICANN board after this because it's not just that you're not paying, it's that you're not paying, you're causing everyone else around you a nuisance. You're threatening your neighbors, like this is going because I don't want someone else to get stuck with you.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense too, because you know there can be a plethora of different reasons for not being able to pay your rent. But if you're being a jerk on top of that, that's you know I think
Exactly.
that's grounds for what you've done.
Yeah, and I mean the one really good thing was through COVID, we did have a lot of tenants who were under financial stress, but essentially what we offer to all our tenants right away is to use last month's rent towards the next rent or the next month of rent so that they could catch up. And nearly all the tenants who ended up taking us up on that offer have now rebuilt their last month's rent. right? So it's always kind of that give and take. Like honestly, the best tenant is a tenant who stays in the unit for as long as possible and who doesn't bug their neighbors. Because yes, you're not getting market rent out of that unit, but it's a completely headache-free unit. If they're paying under market rent, they don't want to move anywhere. If you have a good relationship with that tenant, you can work on solving issues. You can slowly fix things that need to be fixed, and it's basically they're taking care of your investment, right? So to me, it's a lot more important that I have someone good in there who's taking care of my investment than maximizing the rent I'm going to be able to get, and then in 2 years having to redo the whole unit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially in with working with the Ontario landlord tenant landlord board is just like if you can get a tenant that you can trust and you guys are on good terms, then it doesn't really matter what they're paying as long as they're being good, treating your investment well, and you guys can work together on things. I think that's pretty cool.
Like one of the things one of my mentors once told me was, "There's nothing more expensive than a bad tenant." So it doesn't matter what you
Absolutely.
in rent. There's nothing more expensive than putting a bad tenant in, right? So that's like something I've really kept with me. And when we vet people, it's very important that I know and I trust the tenant. And I think it's something that one of the YouTubers I watch, Meet Kevin, said. He said every tenant is a new business partner, right? So if you wouldn't open a business with that person, don't rent to them. And I do look at that with all my tenants. I'm like, would I be comfortable trusting you with this investment? And if the answer is no, if I'm uneasy for some reason, I say I'm sorry. I go with someone else.
I found with my properties is I would have kind of a list in place of like when I first started out in my townhouse, I was living there and renting out rooms, so it was a little different situation. But I had a list of this is the criteria in order to rent the room, and I found any time that I went against that list, it was always a problem tenant.
Yeah.
And it's like you try sometimes it's you're trying to the goodness of your heart to help someone and it comes back and bites you in the butt. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But
Main thing
I'm curious to know about the Hawk Stars franchise and how did that come about in this journey that you've been on?
For sure. So, what actually ended up happening was one of the buildings that we owned. Um, we had just completely finished redoing the upstairs, three different apartments. Everything was settled with that. They were all nice apartments, and my main floor commercial tenant gave me notice that they were going to be leaving. It was good for them because they actually were very successful in the location, and they had grown to the point where the location was now too small for them, and they needed a bigger spot, so they moved into a much larger building in Midland. Um, but that basically gave me an empty storefront, and this was an empty storefront through COVID, where absolutely no one was looking for retail. So basically, when they left, we had it listed on MLS. I had to list it on Facebook. I was posting it everywhere I could, and we got a couple of people coming in, taking a look, and basically, it was very much a renter's market, right? So someone would come in, be like, "Oh, well, if you want us to rent this place, you have to completely redo it for us. So you have to add this in for us. You have to do that for us." And it was just one of those things where it didn't make sense to do because I didn't want to spend $30,000-$40,000 in renovations
Yep.
to get a low paying tenant in there on a 1 year contract, right? It was just something that it wasn't going to happen. Um, but I knew TJ, who was the owner of Hawkstars Wasaga, and TJ was another real estate investor. He purchased homes and he flipped homes in the area, and I had seen him post about Hawkstars, and I'm like, you know what? I want to learn a little bit more about this business because I had absolutely no idea how Hawk Shop worked. I had no idea what it was like. I didn't know about the clients, about why people were going in there. it was really to me it was a very sketchy business, but I knew TJ, I trusted TJ, and he's a very good honest guy. So I'm like, you know what? Let me learn a little bit more about Hawkstar. So I invited him actually to a dinner, and I'm like, hey man, I just want to know more about what you do. So we started chatting. I learned a lot more about basically what the industry was like, who his clients actually were, and kind of the stories behind that, and basically how a hawk shop is a much more ethical approach versus like payday loans and things like that, which are very predatory loans. Because the big thing is a payday loan you can't get out of, right? When you come to us
Mhm.
and you take money out, there's absolutely no hard feelings if you walk away, because basically we're purchasing an item off you for a fair value, and we will right away buy it off you for that value, or we give you the option to buy it back from us, right? So there's no hard feelings. If you bring us something and you want to walk away, it's done. You're not in debt anymore, right? Versus a payday loan you cannot get out of. So, anyways, I'm talking to TJ. I'm like, well, tell you what, let's I took him to a restaurant downtown Penetanguishene, literally like 5 doors down from the the empty shop I had. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, let's go walk up the street, and I want to show you something. So we walk up. I open the door. I'm like, what do you think of this space? And he instantly loved it. He thought it would make a great shop. So uh, that was about 3 months before we opened. And we basically just kind of went crazy, got the place renovated, got everything in place, and we opened up.
Wow, that's awesome. I have to agree with you on that. The whole payday loan thing, I've never been a fan of, and I've always thought that anyone who runs a business like that is they got to check their ethics.
Yeah.
But that makes sense what you're talking about because I've seen you post some stuff about you know come in with any item that you might need some cash, right? And you know you bring in the item, get the cash, and then maybe next month you actually business is picked up for you, and you have some extra cash to go purchase that item back. And so there's, like you said, there's no, you can choose to walk away, or you can come back and get your item. So it's kind of like almost like a bartering system in a way.
It is, and I mean, one of the big things is as well is like I would say at least 70% of our business is people selling us items because they're downsizing or they're upgrading something, and they don't need their old items anymore, and we resell them, right? That's actually the big chunk of the business, and the buyback, what we call it, is a much smaller part of the business, but it's really there to help people who are kind of at their last resort. They can't get anything anywhere else, and it's something too that again we tell them there's absolutely no hard feelings. You bring this in and you don't want it back. We ask them just give us a call because then we can put it out on the shelf, right? And we work with people too. If they're late on items, we don't just take them right away. Like especially anything that could be sentimental, like jewelry and things like that. Like we try our best to hang on to them as long as possible to get them back into their original owner's hands, right? And I think one of the big kind of misconceptions about this industry is really the types of people who are coming in, because it really is people from a lot of different walks of life, and it could be as like I had someone come in who basically lost their job and their house on the same day because they lived at their employment, right? So she had absolutely nowhere to go. She had like a TV, game console, stuff like that, and she put them all in with us because she's like, well, I need first and last month's rent, right? So, and she had to find a job, and she also had no place to put these items. So it was actually cheaper for her to get money from us, have them stored there for a month instead of having a storage unit, figure her stuff out, and then come back the next month and take everything back out, right? And that's kind of the stuff that we like to see. The other big piece of it is really how much stuff we get to divert from the landfills, is the amount of people who come in who are downsizing and they bring us in their old radios, speakers, like old tools, things like that, that they're just like, hey, this was going to go into a bin do you guys want it? And they end up walking out with some cash in their pocket. We get the items, we clean them all up, make them sparkle again, and they get a new home. So that's another one of the really cool things about the industry is it's very environmentally friendly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What in terms of like, there's been a lot of layoffs this year and kind of a more slowing economy. Where do you see like, how does that affect Hawkstars, or does it affect Hawkstars? Maybe it's a good thing. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so it definitely affects us. So, I mean, retail in general has been unfortunately on the decline recently, and that's affected every retail business. It's not just the Walmarts, Best Buys. It's literally all the retail businesses are affected the same way. Um, the one cool thing is actually a stat I heard on the radio the other day was the amount of people who were willing to accept secondhand gifts as Christmas gifts. It's up to 20 something percent from 10% last year. So almost double the amount of people now are saying, you know what, I'd appreciate a secondhand gift for Christmas. And I think that's really cool because, like, I mean, we have a lot of cool things for Christmas, like retro video games. We have vinyl records. We've got some absolutely amazing tools that might have been used like 2 3 times, and you're saving 30 40% on the tool. All right, so I mean, it's definitely affected all of retail, but I think, or I'm hoping that we start seeing consumerism shift a little bit to say, hey, do I really need to buy this new, or will something that was previously used do just as well, right? And I think that's kind of a shift that we might start seeing more and more, especially because we were in a throwaway society. The economy was great; everyone was kind of like single use everything, get it, don't need it anymore, toss it. Versus when the economy tightens up a little bit, I think people uh, will put more value on the items that they have, and that might actually help us say, hey, like, come in here, save a lot of money, get things that are just as good as if you were buying them new, but you're saving a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny that you talk about like the single use economy, how in Canada and North America we're so used to that. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who spent, well, I don't know, probably close to a decade in New Zealand, and they were saying that their culture is very much uh, all about the secondhand gifts and what they can get secondhand and the hand-me-downs and stuff. And I've always been one for, I'd rather go to like a store like Hawkstars, or I'd go to like a thrift store or something like that, because, just because of all the markup that happens in retail. So yeah, I think you're onto something there with, more people are going to want to come in to purchase those secondhand items and, save that way and still get a great product.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, honestly, since I've opened up, I laugh that my toolbox has grown like 3 times the size because I stopped buying new, right? And it's like, like just the other day, I walked in and there was a nice little palm sander on the shelf, like a DeWalt battery operator. I'm like, this will go perfect with my tool set. I'm grabbing it, right?
You're
And
turning into the old man that has the jars full of all the different screws and whatnot, saying, "Yeah, someday I'm going to use this."
exactly, exactly. But no, it is something that it's like every time I go in there, I laugh. I'm like, I have to be quick because if I'm in here too long, looking at the tools, especially, I'm buying something. Yeah.
Fair enough. Hey guys, if you're into hiking at all, I highly recommend subscribing to my YouTube page, Steve Leslie Hikes. That's Steve Leslie Hikes on YouTube. I have a lot of content on there from some of the crazy hikes that I've been on, including Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. And it'd be really cool to connect on there. So please check me out. Thanks. I have a question about, as it relates to having a business in this area. What kind of advice would you give to anyone looking to start a business here? I know one of the things that we've talked about before is just, you had mentioned this area is looking for a younger crowd. It's very it's more of an older population, and so I think that the Midland Penetang area has a lot of really cool things happening, and you're on the water, and it's just a cool lifestyle. What kind of advice would you give for someone looking to start a business up here? Is there anything to look out for, anything to check out, anything at all?
Well, I would say that both Midland Penetang and Tay and Tiny in the outskirts, they're very business friendly. They want businesses here, right? There aren't necessarily the absolute best resources like you might be able to get in some of the larger cities for new businesses to start. But if you're someone like me and someone who's like a true entrepreneur, you don't really need those resources, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur, you're figuring things out. And one thing here is there's a very, very strong community, right? So as soon as Hawkstars opened, I met basically half the street, right? And we still discuss regularly. We talk to each other regularly up and down the street. We have businesses in town who try to do a lot more to promote. We do what we can to cross promote whenever possible. Like there really is that kind of strong community vibe here. So if you are a business that is looking to open up in the area, I'd say one of the biggest things is get to know fellow businesses, because I mean even competing businesses, like there's enough business to go around that people like to support each other here. The other kind of big thing I would say is you really don't need to start big in this area, right? This area really, I think, values the underdog, and they like to see someone starting small. They like to see their success, and they like the community likes to be involved in that success and in that growth. And I've seen this a lot with a bunch of different businesses in town who have really started small and just really built that community following and got to know their customers and built out from there. I think that's really the key in this area, right? It's not like Toronto where you'll have 10,000 people walking past your business every day, and it doesn't matter how you treat your customers because people are going to walk in, right? Here, it's very much like a word of mouth. Like if you're honest, if you're good, if you treat people right, that info gets out there, and people want to support you.
Wow, that's really cool. One of the things that I've gone to recently was a meetup for the economic development of North Simcoe. And you had mentioned that there's another one of those meetups coming up in the new year. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So what we call EDCNS is the Economic Development Board of North Simcoe, and essentially what we're I'm one of the board members right now, and what we're trying to do is our goal is to boost the economy in the area. And there's a lot of different things that we do to try to do that, but like we have four main pillars here in this area, and that is tourism. Tourism is probably one of the most seen pillars of commerce in this area, because we go from a population of around 20,000 people during the winter to over 100 in the summer, right? So there's a massive influx of people who come into this area every summer, and that's really important for tourism and for supporting our local economy. The other one is healthcare. We have Waypoint in our area, as well as a lot of retirement homes in our area, and it's big business, right? It's we have a lot of doctors, nurses, and healthcare professionals that come to this area to establish themselves, and we're kind of known, better or worse, is that it's almost a retirement community, right? So it's important for us to make sure that we keep that appearance up, and we also have like the right nurses, the right doctors, the right everything to make sure that people are able to successfully age in this community and have the right services available to them. The next one is agriculture. and agriculture is huge here, especially in Tiny. We're almost like Ontario's food basket here. Like we produce so many different types of foods, that meats, vegetables, corn, everything you can think of is produced in this area, and we have a massive supply of that in this area. So we also try to help where we can with that. And the last one is advanced manufacturing, and that's kind of like our the modern day manufacturing, the high tech things, and we have a bunch of really cool companies in here as well, like Weber and Magna, and a couple others that are great employers in the area too. So that like we're focusing kind of on those four pillars and how to move them forward, bring in more business, but also bring in more solopreneurs, bring in more entrepreneurs into the area. And we have a very unique area where, like you said, we're on the water, but we're not Collingwood, right? If you go to Collingwood, it's at least twice the price as Midland, right? So if you come to Midland, you can literally establish yourself for half the cost as if you were going to Collingwood. You have the same backyard as you do in Collingwood, but now all of a sudden, as a solo entrepreneur, as a business owner, you can establish that business here, you can build that business here, and you can grow a lot more effectively here. And that's really what we're trying to promote. And the latest kind of piece to this promotion is we're exploring what we're calling the Innovation Hub. And that's a working name for now. But essentially, what the Innovation Hub is going to be a place for entrepreneurs, and not just entrepreneurs, but executive level staff of different companies to be able to come, network, learn, and grow businesses. And that's kind of our North Star, shining star that we're looking at right now to say, hey, this area desperately needs something where entrepreneurs can get better mentorship, they can expand their businesses, they can learn new ways of thinking, pass knowledge amongst each other, and grow as a community. And that's really what we're trying to promote with this innovation hub idea. Um, so we did have an event last month, which I believe you attended. Unfortunately, I was out of the city, so I wasn't able to come to that event. But it was a great event. We had a lot of great people there, a lot of great networking there, and we're actually hosting two different events in the new year. One of them is going to be in Tay Township, and that's going to be within the first 2 weeks of January. And what we're focusing on that event is the tourism industry and understanding how um, every business as a community can help increase their digital footprint in order to help increase tourism for the entire community. And really, the big pushing factor of that event is going to be, hey, let's stop thinking of ourselves as silo businesses, right? Like, if there's one amazing business, we're not going to draw someone from Barrie to come up here, right? But if there's 50 amazing businesses, someone from Barrie is going to make the trip out here because they want to be able to visit all these amazing businesses. So it's really going to be about how, as a community, you can grow your digital footprint, make sure you have the right reviews out there, make sure people are talking about you the right way, in order for someone to look at the community and say, hey, look at all the things we can do when we come to this area. So that's going to be the one in the first couple weeks of January. And then we have another one planned for the ending of January in Tiny Township. And that event is actually going to be kind of a reversal of roles where we're looking for mentors. Because this innovation hub really only works if we have the young entrepreneurs, or not necessarily young entrepreneurs, but new entrepreneurs who want to build their business come in. We also need all that knowledge to come and be passed on to the new entrepreneurs. And one thing that this community has in abundance is knowledge. Because we're a retirement community, we have people who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies who have retired up here, and they want to give back, right? They want to see the next generation succeed. So we're basically hosting an event to try to attract as many of those mentors as possible to come in and say, hey guys, what can you guys do to help with this innovation hub? How would you be willing to help? What would you be willing to do in order to give back? And that's kind of the flip side of this innovation hub, where we're gathering the mentors and saying, hey guys, let's see how we can give back and how we can keep growing the community, because they also want to be part of a thriving community.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't know that like, first off, I didn't realize that you were a board member. I know that you had promoted it quite a bit, but I thought that was just because you were a part of the business in Penetang. So that's really cool. Further, like, I think that's kind of where you had mentioned for the tourism industry, like to be able to showcase the different businesses in the area and to let people know, like, this is a thriving community. It's worth checking out. There's a lot of really cool things, little really cool stores. Just there's a whole different vibe that's going on up here. But how do you show that? How do you promote that? How do you let people know that?
Exactly.
And
One of the
like,
I'd like to mention is there's a reason why when you look at gas stations, they're all around the same corner. There's a reason why when you think of where you're going to eat, all the fast food chains are in the same or on the same strip. And it's because they, even though McDonald's is competing with A&W, is competing with Harvey's or Esso and Petro and Moby or whatever the competition is, they realize that it's not just they're competing with each other. There's strength in them being together and working together to be known for that area, right? And that's really kind of the key message that we want to push across is like, hey, what are we going to do this weekend? We want people to say, let's go to Midland or let's go to Penetanguishene because there's so much to do there. We can aimlessly drive that way and we'll find something, right?
yeah, I had never been to this area prior to uh, when Clarissa and I started dating. And once I came here for the first couple times, I was blown away because the first thing that I would see is you have the Sainte Marie on the Hurons, and across the street you have my mind just went blank there. The big church there. What's it called?
I'm drawing a blank now too, which is really bad.
Wow,
Uh, Martyr Shrine.
Martyr Shrine. That's it. Yeah, but those are like
I'll get in
two
trouble for not knowing
very
one of our biggest.
prominent. What's that?
So I'll get in trouble for not knowing one of our biggest tourist attractions.
We'll just edit that, shorten it up a bit. But yeah, like just seeing those two things before you even like that's not even including Georgian Bay. Plus you have Marsh right there.
Yeah,
So
Discovery Harbor. Just
coming on number 12 there, you have I guess coming from the Aurelia way, you're greeted by that. And then you have Georgian Bay on top of that. And plus, I don't know what the again, another church in Penetang, the one on the prominent one on the top of the hill, not too far away from the Hawk Stars location. That one is also like an architectural wonder. It's worth checking out. The park there is it Wendat Park in Penetang? Is that what it's called?
that Rotary Park.
Rotary Park. Yeah, like that. We walked around there this past summer, and I was blown away by seeing all the statues and all the different pieces of history, and like there's so much up here it's so cool to check out. And yeah, definitely to be able to showcase that and to share that with you know the rest of Ontario or the rest of the world sort of thing. Like Midland, Penetang, they have a lot of cool things, and Tiny Tay, like the whole the whole area. Bomb Beach, another really cool spot.
One of the other really cool things is if you're interested in geology at all, but basically the rock formations that make up Midland and Penetang are considered a world geozone. So it's the Midland and Penetang are actually pushing to turn the bay here into a geopark, which would actually put us on the international map of world wonders to go and see, because we are kind of the entrance to the Thousand Islands. And if you ever do get on a boat and take a tour of Georgian Bay in our area, it is absolutely breathtaking. And to be able to put us on the map for people coming in and experiencing that.
Wow, I did not know that. See, I'm learning so much here. This is amazing. You have so much knowledge. I'm very appreciative of this conversation. I'm still trying to learn as much as I can about the area, so it's really cool. Now, I guess getting into more of the closing thoughts here, you had mentioned that you had a few YouTube channels that you would recommend. What are those channels?
So I'm a big believer of listening to as many different personalities as possible and taking little tidbits from each one. Um, the funniest one, which a lot of people are completely shocked when I tell them that I follow, is Dave Ramsey. And they're shocked because I am in so much debt from acquiring real estate with my business. I work in, or Hawkstar is related to debt as well, and there's just so much of that around. But Dave Ramsey, I would suggest every single person watches him and understands his concepts. He is very extreme for me, but what I like to say is I follow Dave Ramsey's schedule for my personal or his views for my personal life, and then I do the complete opposite for my business life. Right, where it's
I'm the
like,
same way.
yeah, I really believe that you have to be extremely financially sound personally so that you can then put the effort that's going to be required of you into your business, into growth. Right, so I'm a huge believer of saying, hey, look at Dave Ramsey, follow exactly what he says, stop getting into debt, stop buying stupid stuff, stop putting yourself in these situations, be responsible with your money, and get yourself personally set up. Because if you can build that on that foundation of stability, then you can actually grow. If you're not stable yourself, you're going to find it extremely difficult to grow your business. And I have seen this in a lot of people who I follow and a lot of people who have been in contact with who were in real estate as well, is the people who were financially stable themselves weren't crushed by these interest rate hikes because they were sound enough that their business is still sound and they can continue growth and they can continue expansion even through these hikes. Where the people who weren't sound themselves found themselves in a lot of trouble. So I would definitely recommend watching Dave Ramsey if you don't know who he is, and at least even if you're not following him religiously, understand what he's saying and understand why that's important. Um, but yeah, I watch a lot of other people like Graham Stephan, Meet Kevin, Khalid Hammer, Cody Sanchez, Minority Mindset. I love that guy. He breaks stuff down so eloquently and it really gives a lot of value in his videos. Wholesale Ted, which is a unique one because that's all about side hustles and how to add uh, different types of income or income streams, which again I think is very important as you're growing and to understand the concept, if not follow them. And then another one which I really like is Upflip. Um, Upflip is basically a YouTube channel that just showcases businesses and showcases business success. And I find you can learn so much from listening to someone talk about their business, what they found was successful, the issues that they had, and just taking in that knowledge and repurposing it for what you're trying to do.
Right on. Well, thank you for sharing that all those channels. There's a few there that I do follow, and some that I'm gonna have to check out. So that's really cool. Now, Adrian, is there anything else that you may have wanted to talk about, but maybe I haven't asked you about? Like any projects you have going on, or anything coming up that you want to mention?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I can say is like I like to talk to people about investing. I like to talk to people about real estate. I give as much advice as possible where I can, and I honestly don't mind people reaching out to me and asking questions. So if you're looking at this space, if you're local to the Midland Penetanguishene area, or if you want to learn more or have a chat with me, I'm more than happy to either pick up the phone or send some Facebook messages back and forth. I'm easy to find. I'm transparent. Like you can follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. I post the good and the bad, and I tell it as it is. So yeah, if you wanna chat with me, I'm happy to chat. That's the only thing I really want to throw in there.
Cool. And where can people reach out to you? Like, what are your handles or whatever?
Honestly, just search my name. You'll find me. It's a unique
All
enough
right,
name that it's easy enough to find, and um, wherever you find me, I typically reply. So
fair enough. I will put out your Instagram handle on the show notes, and then and on Facebook, it's just your name.
my name.
So you might have to copy and paste the last name, but all right. Well, Adrian, I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing some knowledge and sharing about your journey. And yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting again, and I'll definitely be going to those economic development meetups. So, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. It was great to to be on the podcast. So thanks very much for having me.
So that was Adrian Sauvageot, and what a great conversation! I had no idea that talking about the geology in the Midland Penetang area. I think that was really cool. Just hearing about his story about going from marketing to having having the end of the world show up a few months after he started his own agency, and then transitioning into real estate, getting into Hawkstars, and he's only 30 years old. So the guy's got a lot of stuff going on. I know I followed him for a little while now, and he's always posting cool articles and just like what he's up to and all that stuff. And he's just an interesting guy. So definitely check him out. Like I said, I'll post his Instagram, his Facebook handles in the show notes so you can find him. And yeah, so thank you very much, Adrian. And yeah, to all of you, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Promo Minds podcast. I'm your host, Steve Leslie. And until next time, take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Promo Minds podcast. I'm Steve Leslie, and if you want help crafting your message or sharing your story, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help. Love coming up with ideas, and we can have a nice chat. So reach out to promominds@gmail.com and I'll respond. Take care.